We live in a world that just runs on data, and we're always told that numbers don't lie. But what if they don't tell the whole story? Today, we're digging into this really fascinating tension that shapes, well, pretty much everything. Is data a perfect reflection of truth, or is it something constructed by us? Let's get into it. I mean, you see this every single day, right? We see data presented as the ultimate proof. It's the final word. Doesn't matter if it's a news report, a scientific study, a business pitch, numbers are given this incredible authority. They just feel solid, real, and totally impartial, like a pure, unfiltered record of the world as it is. Right? That is the million-dollar question. Because as soon as you start to peel back the layers just a little bit, that simple, clean idea of data as pure truth, well, it gets a whole lot more complicated. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack. So first off, why are we so drawn to this idea? Well, let's be honest. In a complex and frankly chaotic world, the idea of pure, objective data is so appealing. It promises clarity, it promises certainty, a way to make decisions that are free from all those messy human emotions and biases. So this whole myth, it really stands on a few key ideas. First, we kind of assume that data acts like a perfect camera lens, just capturing reality without any distortion. Second, with big data, we have this belief that if we just collect enough information, all the little errors will just cancel each other out. And finally, we put a lot of trust in our tools, the sensors, the surveys, the software, believing they're completely neutral, just passively recording whatever happens. But as we're about to see, every single one of these assumptions has a catch. Okay, so that brings us to a totally different way of looking at this. Instead of data being something we just discover, like, I don't know, digging up a fossil, it's actually something we build. It's a human creation, an artifact. And just like any artifact, from a clay pot to a skyscraper, it carries the marks of its makers. And here, you can really see the two ideas right next to each other. On the left, you've got the data as truth camp. It's impartial, it's discovered, it's objective. But on the right, the data as artifact view shows us that data is actually shaped by our choices, that it's a constructed perspective, and that it reflects our own biases and limitations. It's a really profound shift in thinking. This really gets to the core of it. I want you to think of a data set like a photograph. Now, a photo captures a real moment, for sure, but the photographer made choices, didn't they? They chose what to include in the frame, the lighting, the angle, the focus, and that's exactly what happens with data. Every dataset is framed by human choices about what to measure, who to include, and what to ignore. It's not some unedited snapshot of reality. It's a very carefully framed one. Okay, so if we're saying data is built, not found, how does this human influence, this bias, actually get into the numbers? Let's take a look at the hidden architects working behind the scenes of every single dataset. All right, one of the biggest, and I mean biggest, culprits here is something called sampling bias. This is a huge deal. It happens when the group you're collecting data from isn't actually a good reflection of the larger group you want to understand. If your sample is skewed, guess what? Your conclusions are going to be skewed too. And this bias, it pops up in a few different ways. Selection bias is probably the one you've heard of, like a political poll that only calls landlines, totally missing huge groups of people. Ascertainment bias is a bit more subtle. For example, in medical studies, maybe healthier patients are just more likely to show up for follow-up appointments, which would skew the data. And then there's exclusion bias, where we just leave out important groups or info altogether, creating a massive blind spot. And wow, look at the effect this can have. It's dramatic. On the left, you see the actual reality, a population that's split 50-50 between Group A and Group B. But on the right, look at what our biased data tells us. It paints a picture where Group A is totally dominant. Now, the data isn't technically lying about the sample it took, but it's giving us a completely warped picture of the real world. But it goes even deeper than just who you ask. Bias doesn't just come from the sample, it also creeps in through the very tools we use, the surveys, the sensors, the questions we decide to ask. These things are not passive observers. Now, this next idea is a little bit of a mind bender, and it comes from information theory. The simple act of measuring something can actually change it. Think about it. Asking someone a survey question might make them think about an issue in a new way, or placing a temperature sensor in a small room can ever so slightly alter the temperature of that room. Measurement is not a passive act. It's an interaction. So, what does all this really mean for our search for truth? This brings us to the bigger, more philosophical questions about what we can truly know through data. Yeah, I know. Epistemology of data sounds super academic, right? But the idea behind it is actually pretty simple. It's the study of how data becomes knowledge. It forces us to ask tough questions. If all data is a human artifact, can it ever show us objective reality? Or are we only ever seeing a bunch of constructed perspectives? And believe me, this isn't just some abstract philosophical debate. It happens everywhere. Look at these examples. In medicine, a study's results can be an artifact if the patient sample isn't diverse. In e-commerce, tracking flaws might completely miss how some users behave, creating a totally false picture of customer journeys. Every single field is grappling with this. So when you boil it all down, what are we left with? It's this one powerful idea. No single dataset is ever the complete story. It's always just one perspective, one slice of a much larger, more complex reality. And just recognizing that, that's the first huge step toward a smarter understanding. Okay, so if we can't treat data as perfect truth, does that mean we should just give up and throw it all out? No, absolutely not. It just means we need to get smarter. We need a toolkit for critical thinking. This is the key question, isn't it? We've taken apart the myth, so now, how do we build a better, more responsible relationship with data? Here's a really practical 3-step game plan. First, triangulate. Don't ever rely on a single source. See if different datasets, collected in totally different ways, all point to the same conclusion. Second, demand transparency. Always ask about the methods. How was this collected? What was left out? What choices were made? And third, practice a healthy skepticism. Don't just accept data as the final word. Treat it like a proposition, an idea to be tested and challenged. I absolutely love this quote because it just nails the new mindset we need. Data isn't the end of the conversation. It should be the beginning of one. It's a starting point for asking better questions, not the final destination of proof. And just to be super clear here, this isn't about becoming some kind of data cynic who distrusts everything. It's about becoming a data connoisseur. The goal isn't to reject data, but to appreciate its nuances, understand its limits, and, at the end of the day, use it more wisely and more effectively. Thinking critically makes data more powerful, not less. So I'm going to leave you with a challenge. The next time you see a headline or a chart that makes some big, data-driven claim, just pause for a second. Instead of just accepting it as truth, what's the first critical question that's going to pop into your head? Because asking that question, that's the first step toward mastering the art of seeing data for what it really is.